I think it's time for an update on the Goldwing. So here's where I'm at so far. I did a lot of work off camera, mostly because it was just sporadic. Not really a lot done in a big chunk any specific day. Also did a little work on the 650 and had it out for a test drive. And it wasn't super talky during that. It drove fine. It is together, and I know that it needs engine work, but it'll drive for now. Driven it for 4 or 5 years as it is. It's not going to get any worse. So what I did is I mounted the taillight and license plate. I don't know if I'm super happy with that yet. It is really close to, the taillight's really close to the plate. And I don't know a way of figuring that out yet, or how to make that a little better. But that's something I'm thinking about. I've taken the shelters off the side, and I'm just about to reattach some logos. So what I've done here is, yeah, I know they're different colors. They're from different bikes. And I didn't actually have two that are off the same bike. So this one's slightly more silver, and what I've done is I've sanded them down, brushed them. Same with this one, sanded it down, brushed it. And I did sand this one down a little bit. It wasn't super solid on that cover right there, but it will go on there now. And these are ready to get some logos put on them. I wasn't totally decided what I was going to do, but I'm going to put the Hondas back on the sides of the shelters and maybe add a stripe down the road. So these are about where I want them to be, which is good because I drilled the holes already. I did mess up, and I did actually hit, I just marked it wrong. Drilled that hole right there behind the A. It'll partially cover, but what I'll do is I will throw in a little bit more. I'm going to use JB Weld, which is dark gray. I will tape that hole up on the back. I'll throw some JB Weld in there. And then once I glue this on, I don't think it'll be too noticeable, but if it is noticeable, I will touch it up with white paint. That one's good. It's only got one post. The rest to be JB welded. And I'm doing the side cover too. This one laid down pretty good. That's why I only taped it 3 times. The other one I taped all across because it just wasn't laying as nice. So now it's on to the side cover with the Goldwing logo, which is right there. And there's the Old Wing logo. So with this one, I had it screwed in on this, or it's behind the tape here, but in the G, it was screwed in. So what I did is just JB welded epoxy around it. I had a clip on it, but it was kind of hashed out. This one was short. But once this sets up and dries, this should be a pretty good bond. I didn't do the edges like I did the other ones, but I did a couple of really good spots where it will bond pretty good. And that's it for today. Today is a day to get a few things back on the bike. Basically, the shelters are going to go back on. I'm going to work on the shelter pins. Of all the things in 2 parts or 2 whole bikes, I didn't have a complete set of 4 shelter pins, so I actually made some. They just rattle. They rattle around like crazy. So when I'm coming up to a stoplight or low speed, this thing sounds like a bucket of bolts, at least to me. So I'm gonna see if I can deaden that somehow. The emblems came out pretty good. I like the way they look. And so I'm gonna work on deadening up the shelter pins and getting these back on. So as cheesy as it sounds, black electrical tape. 2 lengthwise wraps just gives those enough bulk that they fit in here and they don't rattle around very much. There's a little bit, but not too bad. And by the time everything gets in there, they are fairly tight. So let's put the shelters back on. Well, this side was a pain. All the electrics just kind of interfered, made it really difficult to get the pins in. But even when I push it up now, as I get to there, I actually get a little resistance, and I think that will hold really well. So everything is cleaned inside here. I've always been a real big fan of the way, like a lot of people hate the shelter on a Goldwing. They think it should be a real fuel tank, and there's so many conversions out there where they do a single backbone and change the air filter setup and all that kind of stuff. I really kind of think this is the neatest part about a Goldwing, that being the tank, and this being obviously electrics on that side, reservoir for the coolant on that side, and the tray in here is actually one of the biggest things I like. So I cleaned up the tray, and just because I have it, that's the stock toolkit, I believe. And everything's in here. I just cracked it open just to see. It usually lives right up in here. And I use this. I use this quite a bit. And one of the more cool things about this bike. So, side covers are on as well. There's the Goldwing emblem. That was on one of the shelters on the top. I took it off of that. And there's the old wing emblem. So time to button this up and move on to the next thing. All right, last thing for today probably is to get the signal lights mocked up on this. So this is the left side bag. There's where the old light reflector type deal was. I'm gonna pull this one off the side. I gotta pull that off anyways to sand it down. Did a little sanding with a orbital sander just to get to feel what it's like. It's pretty rough. I'll have to definitely do some sanding with lighter grit sandpaper, but get these rough spots down. Get the biggest surfaces with that random orbit sander and then get in there and try to make these as smooth as possible. A couple nicks here and there. But before I do that, let's get the top off, or to get that reflector off, and see where we want to put these signal lights. I'm struggling about how big, or with how big these signal lights are, and I like them a lot, but that's a big hole to cut. That's a lot of real estate. I'll turn that a little bit. It's a lot of real estate on the back of the bike, and it looks, I don't know, almost awkward. I think what I might need to do is just take a photo and see if I can Photoshop that into another picture, and before I cut a massive hole. Wouldn't be quite that big. I'd cut it inside about 1/4 inch and leave the tabs for 2 screw holes, but I'm still shaking my head on this one, or scratching my head on this one. So for now, I'm gonna leave it, maybe do a little mock-up.